part of my role is also overseeing for the district the 504 program. And so that involves students with special needs. So that was especially also why I wanted to be here today, and to hear what folks had to say.
Thank you. Danielle?
So my name is Danielle Butler. I'm the site director, early education over at 18 Degrees. So I'm at the beginning of where all the IEP processes begin and all the 504 plans. So I'm curious what I can learn and how I can help my family step through the processes.
Great.
Cool. Jenny?
I'm Jenny Stokes. I'm the Director of Special Education in Pittsfield.
And I know, Beth, you were messaging me.
I'm
that
here.
you're dinner. Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of balancing back and forth, but I'm Beth Gilbert. I am a case manager for the Shannon program through 18 Degrees. And the reason why I wanted to be here is because I work with a lot of youth that have IEPs and they are struggling.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to learn as much as I could through this meeting and maybe give some suggestions if I'm able to, just so I can help better serve the youth that I advocate for.
Yeah. So one of the things we're trying to do with these bigger problems, remote learning and the pandemic has just forced us to do things very differently than our systems and structures are set up to do. And it makes it really hard to think outside of the box. And the system itself, the rules and regulations, make it even harder because it restricts us in a lot of ways. And what happens is sometimes we get a lot of ideas and you hear back, we can't do that because of X and we can't do that because of Y. And, it's not up to the parents alone or the educators alone to solve these problems. Like, we need to bring in other people with different resources to sort of figure it out. Like, I don't have a child with an IEP or any special needs. I don't know what it's like. I'm not even helping anybody do remote learning, but what I do know is that, a lot of people are struggling. So maybe we could start that conversation, talk about the resources we have and the resources that we think we might need, and identify those gaps together, and then figure out who needs to be brought to the table to make that happen. Because a lot of times we hear about a law or regulation, well, then we need to talk to Trisha Farley Bouvier and Adam Hines, or we need to, do something different in the home or offer something else. So just starting thinking about it in that way might be a little more helpful than just saying, well, we can't do it. How can we do it? So maybe Danielle and Beth, you can talk a little bit about what specifically you see your family struggling with. And then we can try to think about some solutions related to that, or possible solutions.
For sure. Danielle, if you want to go first, feel free, and then I can go after you.
High five, Beth. Sounds great. So adding COVID adds a whole nother struggle to this whole world of, okay, so I have a couple of kids that are just beginning in the preschool programs through Pittsfield Publics. A lot of those aren't open right now, currently due to COVID. So we're running into a wall in general with, okay, I've started the IEP process, but now I'm in a hold up because the schools aren't open. So my services are having a hard time being met. And we in the childcare world are adjusting as well, and how to pick up that other hand of, okay, so what trainings can we provide for our teachers to help them get this process started in their own hands as they have the child in front of them struggling? So basically, I guess we're looking for resources and who to reach out to when the public school is closed. And I would love some trainings for my teachers.
We can definitely do that for you right away. So pre-K makes me very anxious because the backlog of our pre-K evaluations is enormous. I feel like we just started today to do some virtual evaluations, which we're not doing anywhere else in the district because of the validity of them. But we're doing
Yes.
virtual speech evaluations for pre-K students starting today. And, you know, I can give you contact information and we can definitely come in and do training. Anna Shippey, who's a school adjustment counselor, has been doing some work with pre-K teachers, but Linda Carnivale can certainly come and do training. And we can do that, you know, as soon as you need it.
Girl, high five. That would be fantastic.
Danielle, you also mentioned that you were needed some more information about sort of the eligibility process in general. Is that something that you would want to see? A
That'd be
training both for
great.
504 and for IEP?
Yeah, high five, girl. That would be fantastic as well.
Yeah, Anne Marie, I think that's an easy enough thing for us to do. You know, we'll get Katie Lefkowitz, who is our speech and language pathologist for pre-K, and Linda Carnivale is our pre-K leader. So they can come, you know, once you tell us what you want, we can create you know, trainings and assessments and all that kind of stuff.
High five, guys. I can start a list and collaborate all my ideas.
I feel like we're back on track with pre-K.
Yay.
It's been a real struggle, but I feel like we're back on track, and we're starting to, as soon as our numbers go down a little bit, we're going to bring kids in for evaluations. So I feel like we're back on track.
I love this.
For a lot of our preschool students too, it's the related services like Jenny is mentioning, or the evaluations that hold that up. The psychological assessments aren't valid unless they're done in person, and we just haven't been able to release staff to do that yet safely, particularly with the little ones who need a lot of hand over hand support to do that. But a lot of the preschool students don't really need the psychological evaluation as much as they need those, you know, the ones that focus in on their delays, on their skill delays, and so less the cognitive delays. We look at that a little bit later, so we can assess, you know, where they're at with that, through some of the other testing that we do.
Right, and whereas the rest of the older students, we're trying to, like, you know, everybody's so worried about, you know, the lack of being able to engage and the lack of learning, that we're trying to push back on evaluations to say, let's wait till we can do some good interventions. With pre-K, that's a different matter, because pre-K kids need to be evaluated immediately.
Yeah, with the older kids, part of that is not doing the assessments because they might not really be reflective what the child can actually do, that COVID is interfering so much in their learning process that it's almost not fair to necessarily label a child as having a disability when it's really a lack of learning and having their learning needs met that's probably driving some of that for initial evals.
That's interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because, you know, so you're talking about just like the pre-K entrance, not like grades 1 through 6 or something like that, right? So it's
What
just,
I was saying was more for the others, not the pre-K.
oh, okay.
Sort of the K through 12 kids, if they're doing an initial eligibility, you know, let's just say, let's take a third grader and they're doing poorly in math right now, jumping to labeling them as having a math disability when it may simply be that the way we're teaching isn't helping them to learn. You don't want to end up over labeling kids. And so we're having conversations with parents in those situations about maybe we should hold back on this type of testing, give the child an intervention, but hold back on the testing until we see how they respond to that intervention, and see if they respond once we can get them back in person to teaching that better meets their needs. And they may not need, you know, the IEP at that point. They may not need that label, but you know, we have to take it on a case-by-case basis and do what makes sense for that child.
Right.
You know, what makes most sense. But we don't want to jump to identifying kids as disabled when this situation is a learning colossal nightmare for most students. So
Yeah. I'm sort of curious about older students. You know, I work, you know, we have sort of a network that we're constantly nurturing of residents of Pittsfield. And, you know, some of them are dealing with in the, you know, elementary school, where the kids are doing home learning and, they may be ADHD and having trouble focusing. I mean, how do we support those students when a parent, is trying to work from home? I mean, are there current tools available that the school has to offer, or like what's going on with that?
So the school adjustment counselors, earlier, losing track, we're in January, so it's in the fall, did a training for parents. We actually had, for the first one, we had 55 families join us.
Wow.
It was focusing on how to help your child with online learning, and
Mhm.
then did a follow-up to that on one sort of how to help with the challenging behavior that arises from online learning, and that included things like focusing. So they had a PowerPoint that's posted to our website, and it was recorded as
Oh,
well.
great.
So those are all on the website. On the remote, it's called the remote and hybrid component of our website, and those things are on there. So parents could certainly look at that PowerPoint, listen to the presentation, as well as reach out to the school adjustment counselor assigned to their building at any time, because they would definitely be helpful, even if they weren't the ones doing the presenting. That's a lot of what the work that they do is helping parents to troubleshoot those situations. And the teachers also receive training at the beginning of the year on how to, try and help those distracted students, and how to have expectations, and how to set up their sort of the structure of their classroom to sort of assist students with that as much as possible. It's a struggle. It's hard for us to sit online and interact all day long. It's hard for students as well, even harder in some cases. But there are a lot of supports, in terms of strategies that can be used to assist that for parents. Let's see if I could send you some resources too, Alyssa, if you want to post them. Would that be helpful?
That would be great. And for Danielle and Beth, I'm posting the website address for the remote learning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would
Actually,
also be helpful to have the names and addresses and email addresses and school of the school adjustment counselors. We have that as well on the website, but if you think that posting that separately would be helpful, that certainly is something I could send.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that might be helpful, that we could start for each of these work groups, possibly compiling information in a different manner.
Mhm.
Because I do think people get easily frustrated by a website if it's not intuitive to them in particular.
Yeah.
So yeah, having multiple ways is probably good. But you could at least start with browsing through the home learning portion of the school website.
I also created something for parents last year that I think would be helpful too. It focused on just some common accommodations
Mhm.
that they might be encountering with their children, and some just simple ways that parents could support those accommodations in the home setting. So I'll pass that on as well.
Fantastic. And sometimes it's just about knowing who to contact with your
Exactly.
questions. Yeah.
Yes.
I think if nothing else, and I'm sure Jen, you probably agrees with me, one of the things that's been helpful about this collaboration is that it's become very apparent to me that it's not always the lack of the resource or the knowledge, it's the connection of that to the person who
Mhm.
needs it. That's really where the rubber is not meeting the road.
Right.
So,
And yeah, and in a way that they can connect to it and understand it. Karen Vogel from Berkshire United Way is often the one repeating, we are a resource rich community, but a coordination poor community. Like the way
Mm.
information is shared is not getting to the people who need it. And we have to figure that out constantly, how to do that. I actually have a call scheduled with Jordan because I think both of us could learn from each other on how we reach out to families and what works and what doesn't, because sometimes I think it does, and a lot of times we're just poking in the air hoping it sticks.
Yeah. And Jordan, her role is a new one.
Yeah.
And, um,
So I think we could help each other out too. Some of the other thoughts I have, so there's resources that the school can give and tips for parents. And I think sometimes those trainings and webinars happen at times when some parents can't get to it or they weren't aware of it in time. And so it's great to have that recording, but then figuring out how to reshare that as an option. But also, like, so if a parent is trying that and it's not working, what are some other options and resources that are available to help kids? Because I mean, sometimes a parent just doesn't have those skills to support somebody learning. And so I'm wondering if there's other resources in the community that we could identify, whether it's finding additional tutoring from college students or something that could help students. I mean, are we finding, and I'm just, are we finding that some of those resources aren't helping certain students, I guess is the question. And then what else would be available?
With 18 degrees, something that Amy and myself are trying to do for the youth I work with specifically, and it's completely in pilot mode at the moment, but she started reaching out to volunteers to assist in tutoring for some of our students. It hasn't been the cleanest of processes yet, and not very successful, but it is something that we're trying. I know with 18 degrees to just do anything for these youth to give them the extra one-on-one support that they need, especially if they have an IEP. Thankfully, we have a lot of tutors that come in with the educational experience. So that's been really beneficial. But I know that's kind of something that we started on ourselves. But if there was another resource of, another agency that does have, a lot more tutors that are able to do that, I would love to hear, because we have quite the list.
Yeah, I'm wondering with the tutoring, it becomes the same issue. Like if they can't log into their teacher classroom, can they log into their tutor? So I like today I was at 2 different IEP meetings and I was wondering, like what, Alyssa, what you said is like they need an individual connection.
Yeah.
So what they need is, like, I'm wondering, they don't need a tutor, they need a coach that can help them access what's going on right now. Now that's a whole, like, hopefully we're not going to be in this model long enough to have to train those people, but you know what I mean? It's
Right.
a whole different, and now that you said it, I'm thinking of talking with Missy tomorrow about, can we get some coaches? Like there was a student today, I was on his IEP meeting, he doesn't know how to submit his work. He says, I've done my work, I submitted it. And the teachers are saying, no, you didn't submit it. He just doesn't know, how to do it. So he needs like a tech coach. He doesn't need a tutor because he's done his work. He needs somebody to help him to submit it. It's a crazy time, and I don't know.
Yeah. I know, and without somebody who's like in the room with him, like how do you do that?
Right.
I should probably know the answer to this, but Jenny, can our tech people take over student computers from their home?
They can take over our computers, so
Yeah, they
I
should
don't
be
know if
able
they can
to.
do the Chromebooks. I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think they can. They can't take ours over if we're not on the server.
Right.
There are services though, like I've done this with my dad. There are services that you send somebody a link, and if they click on it and give permission, then somebody can, then you can see, and sometimes, depending on the settings, control the computer. So the tech people would know about that.
Yeah, we can check in on that. I'm also thinking that's a really good use of Jordan, because that's where something where she can go and teach a student directly how to how to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or send a video to, like, there's just other things that we could do to support a student like that, for sure.
Yeah, Beth is saying she has a youth who gets overwhelmed switching between screens
Yeah.
to follow along in class. That's why I have a second monitor, because I can barely do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like if I'm zooming and like I want to see something, but I don't want to lose you all, right? Because then where did that go?
Yeah, it took me forever to realize if I just clicked on the Zoom again, you'd all come back.
Right.
But that's an important thing. That's a good thing to write down, and we can let our learning management systems person know. Maybe he can put together a lesson
Mhm.
that shows people how to do that.
So what about if a student has an IEP and the parent is expected to, or they're supposed to have special accommodations, and they don't feel that those accommodations are being made by the school in whatever way? Who are they supposed to reach out to?
They need to reach out to the IAC, their instruction and accountability coordinator for the school. And I can send you a list of those. But if their accommodations are not being met, then they definitely need to reach out to the person who's writing their IEPs. So each school has a person attached to all the special education students.
Okay, yeah. Beth seconded that too. Is that list available on the school website, or?
It is not, but it probably should be, right, Anne Marie? I don't use the school website as much. I definitely should get that
Yes.
there on the school website.
Yeah.
I'll do that first thing in the morning.
If you want, Jenny, I can send you the one I have for the SACs, and we can alter it, and then you can just add the IACs as a separate chart right on
That
it,
would
and
be
then it's
perfect.
one document.
That would be perfect.
So,
Great.
I mean, our IAC group is really, really strong, so parents should know who their IAC is,
Mhm.
but that's who they should reach out to.
Okay.
but they may not know that without being reminded
Right.
that that's the case.
Right.
Yeah. Because that person can troubleshoot any IEP issue.
Mhm.
So if it's a 504 issue, because we didn't talk about that, at this elementary level, the principals manage 504s, and at the secondary level, the guidance counselors, the school counselors are the designees for facilitating 504s. So that would be. Alyssa, you look like you want to say something. That's why I stopped. So go ahead.
Can you explain to me the difference between an IEP and a 504?
Absolutely. So a 504 is, they both are students who have a disability. The eligibility is different. So for a 504, you have to have a disability, and it has to be impacting a major area of life functioning. How that differs from an IEP is that the IEP categories are like, I think it's 13 categorical eligibility categories that you have to have one of those disabilities in order to be eligible. With a 504, that could be broader. So for example, several years ago, I had a student who had multiple dystrophy. Okay, so this young man was in a wheelchair, needed a lot of mobility support and in order to access his learning, but intellectually, cognitively was on track and could access all of the other work. So he did not need an IEP because he didn't need specialized instruction. He just needed assistance with mobility. And so he had a 504 that met all his mobility needs. So there are accommodations, like he had someone who would walk with him and carry his materials. He had a scooter, those kinds of things. So you could have a student who has really a lot of ability issues, in terms of whatever those are, but is on a 504 and not an IEP.
So that's more like where the paraprofessionals were involved?
No, paraprofessionals are an IEP because that's considered
okay.
specialized instruction. Now there are, just having, how like every time you have a rule, there's an exception.
Yeah.
So with somebody who's significantly, like, this young man did not have that I just talked with you about did not have a para because he had a very strong peer network. And so he didn't need that extra level of support, didn't want it but I've had other situations where if someone says that much mobility needs, they have needed a one-on-one. So there is a very small number of cases. I don't know, I think there's been 2 in the last 5 years where an IEP might be done on a 504, but very rare. But it also could be, we have a lot of students who have anxiety disorders, ADHD, other mental health disabilities that are on 504s and not on IEPs. And that's because accommodations are all they need in order to be able to access the curriculum. They don't necessarily need a specialized reading program that you would get on an IEP or something like that. I don't know if that clarifies. So there's a lot. And Alyssa, what we'll do is when we do the training for 18 degrees, why don't we invite you?
Please.
Then we could then, you could hear all of that, go through I already have a PowerPoint which explains all the differences and the similarities and all of that.
That's great.
So, so basically for an IEP, there's 3 questions. 1, do you have a disability? Is it Jenny, help me. Is it impeding progress? Are you making progress? And then do you need specialized instruction? Those 3 questions together form the base of an IEP. For the 504, it's do you have a disability and is that impacting a major life area of functioning? And if it's yes to both of those questions, then with a lot of conversation, you would make a decision about eligibility. But the real biggest difference is IEP is special ed, 504 is regular ed. It's general ed accommodations.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No problem. That was the quick one.
That was nicely done.
Yes.
I often ask questions that isn't necessarily relevant to my job, but just out of curiosity, because I know other people might be asking those questions in their head.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to verbalize those things when they pop in.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's confusing to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Danielle, I want to make sure that before we end that I'm responsive to like getting trainings too. So if you could send me an email tomorrow, like
yes,
to jstokes@pittsfield.net and just bullet what you want trainings on, and Anne-Marie and I will make sure that happens.
I love this. I appreciate it very, very much.
That's great.
That's an easy ask.
Yeah.
Done.
Sometimes it's all you need.
Right.
I would ask Anne-Marie and Jenny, are there resources that you feel the school district needs or accommodations or something that would make your jobs easier in either getting information to parents or identifying different needs?
I think the daycares have been stellar in terms of trying to step into this crazy remote learning. They're setting up kids' desks. They're doing amazing things. So it's a struggle. There's no question. It's a struggle on both ends. But I think I've been so impressed with what the daycare agencies have been able to do.
I was thinking about, I guess I am not as familiar with the ways that the different organizations communicate with their families. And so I think if I knew more about how people did that, or had a contact person like at each agency to send information to, like if I wanted to get information out to families, I would love to have that piece of information, I guess. I don't know, something we can probably gather up individually, but if there is some kind of somebody's already put that information together in some way, that I would love that. But because then I would just create my own group, and anytime there was something that was relevant, I would just send it out so everyone knew it. So.
Well, I think as organizations, so if the folks at 18 degrees got it, they would circulate it, as Beth is saying, in the chat to their families. We are community navigators, in particular with the Spanish speaking families. They use WhatsApp and they send out, they have over 400 people that they communicate with, and we send out little tidbits and flyers. And then, we have our groups of emails, but we connect to a number of nonprofits in the community. So we just blast it, and if it's relevant, when we get it, it's just important to share. And then the community navigators will sometimes pick up pieces and share it, because I think the school district sends out these longer emails, and you have to sort of scroll through it to find the resources that you want. We talked about that last month. And it's nice to have the organizations pick out the pieces that are relevant, and then resend it in an easier format.
Yeah. I've been thinking too that I need to get, this is not my strength, so I'm going to say that up front,
Okay.
but thinking that I need to think through how to revamp the way the material that I would be sharing more on the social emotional learning end of things, and all these other things that we talked about, to make that a little bit more accessible and user friendly on our website to find it. I think people are struggling to find it. And so that's something I'm going to talk with our IT department and see if I can get some consultation with one of them about how to make that look better and it just be more accessible.
Yeah. And I think we can figure out, oh, I lost it. Let me finish writing this sentence.
Sure.
What I'll do for you, Jenny and Anne Marie, is I'm going to add you. We have an online community called Basecamp that our partners, we sort of share information with each other. And so when you have a training or event that you think is relevant,
Great.
you can just share it there, and then it blasts out to everybody.
Jenny, another thought that I had, that maybe we could solicit some folks through these networks for our parent advisory council.
Yes, our special ed parent advisory council is, it's like this meeting, like very little people.
Yeah.
So we need to, I need to work on that, but yes, definitely. If you could send it out to the WhatsApp and we could get parents, that would be great.
Yeah.
It is really hard to engage parents. I will definitely agree with that.
We have found virtually we're more able to engage parents than in person.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to coordinate with each other to figure out how to do that. Like you send your list, I'll send my list, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to acknowledge James Swift has joined us. Hi.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for joining the conversation.
You're welcome.
We've been talking about how we can support students with IEPs and special needs. And we've been sort of mostly sharing information. So we've got 2 folks from 18 Degrees and 2 folks from the Pittsfield Public Schools. Do you have specific concerns or thoughts that you wanted to bring up?
No, I just want to listen tonight.
Okay, cool. So we also recorded it, James, so you missed the first half hour, and we'll share that as well. But mostly I think we talked about having some people have trouble navigating the Pittsfield Public School site specifically for these issues, and I think for breaking down the different categories of concerns that were raised in our December meeting, we're thinking of setting up like public folders of information that people will be able to access, because what's happening is someone asks a question and then the school district says, oh, well, we have that resource. Did you know about it? And so we can categorize them pretty easily and make it a little more accessible to folks who are interested.
Sound good.
And then the other thing I wanted to ask you all is, so when we're talking about other organizations that are supporting the same students and who would be interested in this issue who aren't here tonight. If you want to, if you can suggest those folks to me, I'll write them down and reach out to them and see if we need to have a follow-up conversation so that we can always have the right people in the room for solving these issues and also sharing the information. I mean, Jenny, you said that a lot of the childcare providers are like on point and doing a great job. So you're like in touch with them on a regular basis?
Yeah, with the Boys and Girls Club and with the YMCA.
What about Gladys Allen?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's, as we all know, this is a very difficult situation, but I think it's important for everyone to know that Jenny has been a steadfast sort of advocate for getting our special needs students back into school. And so that has been a really rough process. We got there once, and then, as you know, the numbers went up and that stopped. But we share that with parents, that desire to get those students back. We know this is not the best way for them to learn. You know, that everyone's trying to do their best, parents are trying to do the best, teachers are, but it's just not ideal. So I just want to recognize that, you know, it's important that, you know, we're on that page too. So.
Yeah,
I feel like that's like one of the biggest things that I'm struggling with the students that I work with is getting them to just even sign in to their classes. That has been one of the most reoccurring things of, you know, how's school going? Oh, it's fine. And then, you know, I follow up with their guidance counselor and they haven't showed in like 2 weeks. So, and most of those have IEPs. So is there any suggestions or ideas on better ways that I can kind of just get them re-engaged in the best possible way where they're not feeling so overwhelmed? Because, you know, when I do talk to them, it always comes down to, I'm overwhelmed, I don't understand. And, you know, I learned today that one of the youth I work with has up to 40 kids in one of her classes. And so, you know, my concern there is, well, of course you're not, you know, speaking up when you don't understand something in class. There's a lot of kids in there. So just giving her that additional one-on-one support. Do you have any recommendations?
Is that student in the PPVA, Beth?
It is. Yeah, she
Okay.
is.
So I only asked that because it's a different way of learning in the PPVA. So they may have 40 students, but they're not all in class necessarily at the same time. On occasion, they would be, but that's one of the challenges. So I would suggest, whether it's the PPVA or not, that you, I would reach out to, if it's a secondary student, to the guidance counselor, and or the SAC, or the SAC or the principal at the elementary level, because a teacher could set up a meeting with that child and family and to say what part of this work is overwhelming and make some adjustments and get them back on track. So that's, you know, we have a lot of kids who are feeling like, I don't know where to do this. And so they just not doing anything, but we can problem solve with them about, okay, what's most critical? Or so that if a teacher knows that the student is just overwhelmed by this number of assignments, can pick the most critical assignments and say, let's get those in now. And then, you know, really work with that. So I would suggest that you reach out either at the PPVA to either Rebecca, who it looks like you work with.
Yeah, she's great so
Yeah,
far.
or Jess Iorio. Jess Iorio
Yeah.
is the guidance counselor there. And I know I just had a meeting with a family with the PPVA the other day, and we did exactly that. You know, we looked at what's going on, what the classes were, what was overwhelming that child, and then just made some changes to what they were responsible for so they weren't feeling so off track, you know.
Yeah, they've been really, really helpful with some of these students, but it's just sometimes even that's not enough, it feels like. So I was just, you know, any additional information I was trying to gain, and at some point, you know, it is what it is, but if I can learn anything, that's always a plus.
Yeah. It's hard because none of us want, we know it is what it is, but this is like that child's only whatever grade they're in, that's their only chance at seventh grade or sixth grade or whatever it is. And we want them to be as successful as possible. We're gonna have a lot of work to do when these kids come back into a building on a full-time basis, re-engaging them in the learning process.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, I have to hand it to all the organizations, the students, the teachers, the school district. I mean, we're all working in unworkable situations. And, sometimes it feels like doing the best we can isn't enough, but we have to sort of, pool our resources and remember that we're, Beth, Danielle, you are not alone in this struggle. And so if you walk away from anything today, I hope you walk away with that, because we're trying to get the resources out there and figure it out. And if it's just, if it's just a need to know about the resources, that's fantastic. But if you need more, don't be afraid to reach back out. You have my email address.
I appreciate the connection, ladies, very, very much. And I will
Yeah.
definitely get on emailing when I come up with some good topics in my head.
yeah.
I know. And yeah, if you have other questions that you forgot to raise or come up later, that's why we're here, so that we can, the conversation shouldn't end here. So I'm going to reach out to the Boys and Girls Club YMCA and Gladys Allen Brigham and see, let them know and share the recording. And then also, we'll put together, Anne Marie and Jenny, the list of resources, and I'll post them on Basecamp, but then I can make that a public link so that anybody can access them and we can share them. So it's a great way to organize the different pieces.
Sounds good.
Amazing.
James, I just feel bad. Did you have any questions that came up while you listened? Because we didn't have enough time with you.
No, not really. Just that my thing is I try to meet them with the ad. Meet them with the ad and like what I've been hearing is great. We gotta get the resources. Resources is the key. We gotta get them linked with other network. And meet them with that, because right now, with the pandemic going on, it's really difficult dealing with the population we're working with. So I agree with everything that you guys are saying, and you guys doing great work. I commend you.
Thank you. And James, because you registered, we're going to send the link to this recording to all the registrants, along with any resources that come out of it. So please feel free to share that as you will with anybody who you think needs it. Okay.
Alyssa, I just have one question before we close.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw my email, but the 21st is scheduled to be the day at 12:30 for social emotional learning, but I cannot do that day. And so I wanted to see if we could do it the following week on the 28th at 12:30. If that would work for you. I would really like to be there.
Yeah. Let me see while we're on how many people are registered for that, because that could be an easy fix.
Okay, good.
I mean, I know one person definitely registered, but let's see.
I was going to, on that date, share some of our student survey data. There's some components of the engagement and stuff that I thought folks would be interested in seeing.
That's great. So that was the one on the 21st or
12:30, yeah, it was the one that was the social, emotional, and mental health.
oh, I screwed that one up. Let's see.
I'm pretty sure the 21st is a Thursday, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what happened. So I'm gonna have to get back to you. There's something weird on here.
Okay, so just let me know, but know that I can't do that day as it was scheduled. So that
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think I you know, I've been trying to pull all this. I don't have like any staff support, so I've been trying to pull together all these meetings. And I
Yeah.
think I did a scheduling oops that I'm gonna have to fix anyway. So
Okay, great. So I
yeah.
can, you could reach out to me. You have my email. So
Yeah.
I responded. That'll be a reminder to you too. So.
Okay. Anything else before we close out? I have my list of to-dos.
I appreciate this very much, guys, very much. And I hope
Yeah.
everyone has a great night.
Great, Danielle, I would look forward to working with you.
You too, girl, very much.
Thank you for being a
Hi,
part
it
of
was
the
nice to meet
conversation.
all of you.
You
Yeah.
guys as well.
We'll keep going.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.